A blind child lost in the vastness of the forest, two elite soldiers on the brink of death, and a K9 whose supernatural instinct was the only hope. Prepare for a story that defies reason and exposes shocking secrets. Anna's strangled cry cut through the forest air. The radio in her hand trembled, cold plastic against her sweaty fingers. "Dispatch, this is Ranger Ana Santiago. Code 3, repeat. Code 3, child in danger, two unconscious individuals, suspected poisoning. Location, Delta 7 sector, near the old mining shaft. We need paramedics, police, and maybe more. Zeus, stay here, boy." Zeus, hackles still raised, let out a low growl but obeyed, sitting rigidly beside the girl. The blind child, trembling, clung to Anna's leg, her face pale and streaked with dirt. The girl's vacant eyes seemed to absorb the faint light filtering through the tree canopy, but she couldn't see the gravity of the scene around her. The two uniformed men, bound and lying motionless on the damp ground, their faces purplish and strange foam at the corners of their lips. Anna rushed to the soldiers, checking their pulses with trembling fingers, weak, almost imperceptible. The sickly, sweet, metallic scent emanating from them was nauseating. She tried to loosen the ropes binding them, but they were too tight, complex knots that suggested a macabre professionalism. Minutes dragged on, each second an eternity. The oppressive silence of the forest, once peaceful, now seemed complicit, broken only by the girl's muffled sobs and Anna's heavy breathing. Then, a distant, almost inaudible sound began to grow, a high-pitched hum which soon transformed into the piercing wail of a siren tearing through the forest canopy. Another, then another. The ground began to vibrate faintly with the approaching vehicles. Blue and red lights pulsed through the trees, painting the forest in intermittent flashes of urgency. A police cruiser was the first to arrive, quickly followed by an ambulance and an unmarked SUV bristling with suspicious antennas. Uniformed officers and paramedics jumped out, their voices mingling in a chorus of orders and questions. "Ranger Santiago, what have we got here?" Sergeant Miller, a veteran with a time-worn face, approached, his eyes widening at the sight. Anna pointed to the child, then to the soldiers. "The girl! Zeus found her near the shaft. The soldiers. They were like this. Bound, poisoned, Sergeant. They're special forces. I recognize the uniform." Paramedics quickly knelt beside the men, their first aid kits snapping open. One of them cursed under his breath at the victim's condition. "These are potent toxins. We need intubation and antidote immediately. Their pulses are almost non-existent." "Deal." While the medical team struggled to stabilize the soldiers, other officers began to cordon off the area. A man in a dark suit with a penetrating gaze, who had stepped out of the unmarked SUV, observed everything with calculated intensity. He was Special Agent Davies of the FBI, and his swift presence already indicated the gravity of what was unfolding. Zeus, oblivious to the human commotion, had risen. He sniffed the air, then walked calmly to the edge of the mining shaft, stopping mere inches from the darkness. He sniffed the ground, then let out a short, sharp bark, not of aggression, but of warning. "What's he doing?" one of the officers asked, watching the K9. Anna approached. He always does this when he senses something. Is there something else here, Zeus?" The dog growled softly, nudging his snout against a piece of fabric caught on an exposed root. A torn piece of dark cloth with an almost imperceptible emblem embroidered on it. A stylized owl with sharp talons, clutching what appeared to be an hourglass. Agent Davies approached, his eyes fixed on the emblem. A cold recognition passed over his face. "Ranger Santiago," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You and your dog have just stumbled upon something far larger than a simple forest incident." The forest, now filled with voices and artificial lights, seemed to have revealed only the tip of a dark iceberg, and Zeus's growl resonated like an omen. Agent Davies knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rough outline of the fabric. The owl and hourglass emblem seemed to suck in the ambient light, a silent foreboding. "This is disturbing," he murmured, more to himself than to Anna. "This symbol belongs to an organization we thought was extinct, or at least inactive, for years. They call themselves the Chronos." Anna felt a shiver run down her spine, oblivious to the name, but not to the gravity in the agent's voice. "Chronos? What do they do? What does this have to do with the soldiers and the girl?" Davies stood, his eyes sweeping the scene with renewed intensity. "The Chronos are a paramilitary group, a kind of techno-scientific cult. They have a history of human experimentation, kidnappings, and more recently, the development of biological weapons. We believe they operated primarily overseas." He paused, his lips tight. "Their presence here, in our forest, is a catastrophic intelligence failure." As Davies spoke, the paramedics, with the help of other officers, managed to intubate the soldiers. Infusion pumps began to hum, administering antidotes and stabilizers. "They're critically stable," a paramedic shouted to Sergeant Miller. "We need to get them to a hospital urgently. Toxicology specialists." The blind girl, still clinging to Anna's leg, began to whimper. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the tension in the air. Anna knelt, embracing her. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now." The child trembled, her small body exhausted. An officer approached, offering a silver thermal blanket that crackled softly as he unfolded it. "Ranger Santiago," Miller called. "We need to know everything, every detail, and your dog. He's key to all this, isn't he?" Zeus, oblivious to the conversation, continued to sniff the edge of the shaft. Suddenly, he pushed his snout deeper, scratching the ground with a paw. A muffled sound of metal against stone escaped the loose earth. "Zeus!" Anna exclaimed, rushing to him. The dog had unearthed something. A small, cylindrical device, dark, smooth metal, with tiny lights blinking intermittently on its surface. It didn't look like a weapon, but the way Zeus treated it, with caution and an almost inaudible growl, suggested danger. Davies approached cautiously, reaching out to take the object. "Don't touch it, Agent," Anna warned, her voice laced with urgency. "If Zeus found it like that, it's not safe. He has a different sense of smell." The agent paused, his hand suspended in the air. He observed the device, then the dog, a flicker of curiosity mixed with respect passing through his eyes. "What is it, Zeus?" he whispered. The dog let out a short bark, his head tilted as if trying to communicate. The device's lights blinked faster. "It's a tracker," Davies finally said, his voice tense. "And it appears to be active." He pointed to the lights. "They were monitoring these soldiers, and now, perhaps they're monitoring us." A police rescue helicopter, its blades spinning with a deafening roar, began to descend over the clearing. The strong downdraft stirred up leaves and dust, making the forest dance in a whirlwind. The helicopter's arrival, though a relief for the injured, added a new layer of urgency and exposure. The Chronos conspiracy, once hidden in the forest's shadows, was now a visible threat, and Anna and Zeus were right at its center. The powerful downdraft from the helicopter blades whipped the forest into a frenzy. Leaves, branches, and loose earth swirled violently, stinging Anna's face as she shielded the blind girl closer to her. The deafening roar of the rotors swallowed all other sounds, turning shouted commands into silent, frantic gestures. Paramedics, their faces grim beneath the swirling dust, worked with swift precision, carefully loading the intubated soldiers onto stretchers. Every movement was deliberate, a desperate race against time and the potent toxins coursing through the victim's veins. The blind child, overwhelmed by the cacophony and the sudden gust of wind, buried her face in Anna's uniform, whimpering softly. Anna stroked her hair, murmuring reassurances that were lost in the roar, her own heart pounding against her ribs. Zeus, ever vigilant, remained steadfast beside them, his ears flattened against his skull, but his gaze remained fixed on the sky, then on the ascending helicopter, a dark silhouette against the fading light, carrying its precious poisoned cargo towards an uncertain fate. As the helicopter ascended and its sound faded to a distant hum, a tense silence descended upon the clearing, broken only by the crackle of police radios and the rustle of disturbed foliage. Agent Davies, his expression unreadable, carefully placed the cylindrical tracker device into an evidence bag, sealing it with a snap. "This device is our only concrete lead, Ranger Santiago," he said, his voice low and heavy with gravity. "They knew the soldiers would be here. They were waiting." Sergeant Miller approached, his brow furrowed. "So it wasn't a random attack, it was a trap." "Precisely," Davies confirmed, his eyes sweeping the forest again, as if expecting more dangers to emerge from the shadows. They didn't just want to eliminate the soldiers, they wanted it to be a warning. The owl and hourglass symbol isn't accidental, it's a signature. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. The innocence of the forest had been undone, replaced by a calculated and relentless threat. And the girl. Why was she there? Davies sighed, the weight of the situation evident on his shoulders. We don't know. Kidnapping? An unwanted witness? Or perhaps she was part of something more sinister. The Kronos have a history of using vulnerable individuals in their experiments. He paused, looking at Zeus. "Your dog, Ranger Santiago, he's extraordinary. Without him, the girl would be dead. And the soldiers would have been found too late, if at all." Miller nodded. "Zeus is a hero, no doubt. But this puts us in a complicated situation, Anna. You and he are now key witnesses, and potentially targets." The blind girl, calmer now that the helicopter was gone, lifted her head, her vacant eyes seeking Anna's face. "Water," she whispered, her voice weak. "We're taking her somewhere safe," Anna said, picking the girl up. The small body was light, but the responsibility felt heavy. "And Zeus comes with us," Davies nodded. "There's no other option. We have to go to a secure location. A temporary command center has been set up. We need a full debriefing, and your dog will be crucial to understanding what happened and what we can expect." The forensic team was already moving, marking evidence and taking photos, transforming the crime scene into a mosaic of yellow tape and numbers. The forest, which once harbored only wildlife, now held the secrets of a dark conspiracy. Anna, with the girl in her arms and Zeus by her side, followed Davies and Miller out of the clearing. The soft ground beneath their feet felt different now. Every leaf, every shadow, a potential lurking threat. The scent of pine and damp earth mingled with the metallic odor of blood and the sickly sweet residue of the poison. They entered another unmarked SUV, its interior dark and silent. The engine started with a soft purr, and the vehicle glided away from the forest, carrying not only the protagonists, but also the seed of a mystery that promised to unravel even deeper layers of danger and intrigue. The journey out of the woods was just the beginning. The SUV cut through the deepening night, the soft purr of the engine and the hum of tires on asphalt, the only sounds breaking the tense silence within the vehicle. Anna held the blind girl tightly against her, the warmth of the small body an anchor amidst the storm of events. The child had fallen asleep, exhausted and overwhelmed, her face pale and smudged with dirt. Zeus, lying in the footwell of the back seat, let out soft sighs, but his eyes, even half closed, remained vigilant, moving with the sway of the car. Up front, Agent Davies spoke on a satellite phone, his voice low and urgent. Fragments of words floated in the air. Maximum priority, enhanced security, no information leaked. Sergeant Miller drove, his gaze fixed on the road, his jaw tight. The gravity of the situation weighed on everyone like a damp, heavy shroud. The journey seemed to last an eternity, but finally the SUV slowed, turning onto a gravel road that led to a discreet structure, almost hidden among tall, dense pines. Subtle security lights illuminated the perimeter. The vehicle stopped before a heavy metal gate that opened with a soft electronic whine. Inside, a paved courtyard and a windowless grey concrete building seemed to emerge from the earth itself. It wasn't a police station, nor an FBI office. It was a bunker, a temporary command center, built to be invisible and impregnable. As they entered, the air inside the command center was cold and sterile, with a faint scent of disinfectant and new technology. Computers hummed in an adjacent room, and the rustle of papers and the click of keyboards were the only sounds. Doctors and psychologists already on standby approached immediately. "Ranger Santiago, please hand over the child," said a woman in a white lab coat, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll take care of her. Physical and psychological evaluation." Anna hesitated for a moment, her protective instinct pulsing. But the girl needed specialized care. With one last tight hug, she handed her over. Zeus let out a low growl as the girl was led away, his brown eyes following her until she disappeared through a door. "Ranger Santiago, Sergeant Miller," Davies called, gesturing towards a conference room. "We need an immediate debriefing. And Zeus, he's part of this too." The room was Spartan. A large metal table, chairs, and a projection screen. The cylindrical tracker, now inside a Faraday cage to prevent any transmission, lay on the table, a silent witness. "The Kronos," Davies began, his voice grave, "are masters of camouflage and subterfuge. They operate in autonomous cells, and each member is trained to be expendable. Their ultimate goal is control through genetic and technological manipulation. They believe time is malleable and that they can shape the future, hence the hourglass symbol." Anna sat down. Zeus nestled at her feet. She felt the fatigue, but adrenaline still coursed through her veins. But why here? Why these soldiers? These soldiers were part of an elite military intelligence unit assigned to investigate anomalies in remote areas, Miller explained. Reports of unusual activities, animal disappearances, and even some people claiming to have seen strange lights in the forest. Small things easily dismissed as folklore, but which, together, formed a pattern. Davies nodded. They were very close to discovering something. The poison used on the soldiers is an advanced neurotoxic compound which attacks the central nervous system, but slowly, prolonging suffering. It's a signature. They want to send a message. "And the girl?" Anna asked again, concern in her voice. "We still don't know," Davies admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But her presence there, so close to the shaft, so close to the soldiers, it's too convenient. She might be an incidental victim, or perhaps she was left there deliberately, a decoy or a test." Zeus, who had been quiet until then, raised his head. He sniffed the air, then let out a low growl, almost a murmur, directed at the Faraday cage. The tiny lights of the tracker, even through the barrier, seemed to glow more intensely in Anna's mind. "He's reacting to the tracker," Anna observed, her voice tense. "He senses something from it." Davies and Miller exchanged glances. "Ranger Santiago," Davies said, "your dog is more than a canine. He has a detection capability that transcends what we know. This is an invaluable asset, but it also makes him a target, and by extension, you too." The silence in the room was heavy. The hum of the computers in the adjacent room seemed amplified. Anna looked at Zeus, who now gazed at her with his intelligent, loyal eyes. The forest, once her sanctuary, had become the stage for an invisible war, and she and her canine partner were now at the epicenter of a conspiracy that threatened to destabilize far more than just the tranquility of a nature preserve. The journey out of the woods had been just the beginning, and the path ahead promised to be arduous and dangerous. The silence that followed Davy's words was almost palpable, broken only by the distant hum of computers and the faint scrape of a chair. The revelation that she and Zeus were now targets resonated in Anna's mind, a dark note amidst the cacophony of her new reality. The forest, once a peaceful refuge, had been desecrated, and the line between her life as a forest ranger and the dark world of military intelligence had blurred. Davies leaned over the table, his eyes fixed on the Faraday cage housing the tracker. The Chronos don't leave loose ends. If they know you've exposed them, they will come. And they are not like any enemy you've ever faced. Miller nodded, his brow furrowed. Our conventional units don't have the capacity to deal with this. They're ghosts, appearing and disappearing without a trace. The only reason we have anything is because of Zeus. Anna felt the warmth of Zeus's body against her legs, a constant reminder of the unbreakable bond they shared. He raised his head again, a low growl vibrating in his chest, directed at the sealed box. It wasn't a growl of aggression, but of deep unease, as if the object exuded an invisible, disturbing presence. What exactly does he sense? Davies asked, his voice filled with an almost scientific curiosity. Is it the material, the residual energy, the scent of whoever touched it? Anna shook her head. I don't know. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. He reacts to danger, to hidden people, but this, it's as if he senses the object's purpose, its intention. A doctor entered the room, his face tired, but his eyes conveyed professional seriousness. Agent Davies, an update on the child. She's physically exhausted and dehydrated, but with no serious injuries. Psychologically, she's in shock but stable. She has a name. She's called Luna. Anna felt a pang in her chest upon hearing the name. Luna. A child thrown into the midst of such a cruel conspiracy. Anything unusual? Davies asked, without taking his eyes off the doctor. Yes, the doctor hesitated. She has a rare genetic condition that affects skin and eye pigmentation, in addition to her blindness. But what's most intriguing is that we found small, almost microscopic, subcutaneous implants at the base of her skull and on her wrist. Very advanced, non-invasive technology, but definitely artificial. They appear to be sensors or perhaps tracking devices. A chill ran through Anna. Implants, so she was part of something. It seems likely, Davies confirmed, his voice grim. The Chronos are known for their experiments on individuals with genetic anomalies, seeking enhancement or control. Luna may have been a guinea pig, or perhaps a means to a greater end. Zeus let out a short, sharp bark, his eyes fixed on the Faraday cage. He stood up, scratching the floor with his paws, and then pushed his nose against the box, sniffing with intensity. A low sound, like a muffled click, emanated from inside the box, almost inaudible to human ears. He's sensing something inside the box, Miller murmured, watching the scene in astonishment. How is that possible? Davies approached, his expression a mix of fascination and concern. A Faraday cage blocks electromagnetic waves. But if Zeus is reacting to something more, an energy resonance, a quantum field, something that transcends our current understanding of physics. He paused, his eyes gleaming with a new comprehension. Your dog isn't just detecting danger. He's detecting the signature of the Chronos, the very essence of their technology. He picked up the box and carefully placed it on the floor, a safe distance away. Zeus immediately began to circle it, his body tense, sniffing the air around. He stopped abruptly, pointing his nose eastward, a deep, continuous growl reverberating in his chest. He's indicating a direction, Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. He's sensing where it came from. Davies and Miller exchanged a meaningful look. Sergeant Miller, prepare a reconnaissance team. We need to check that direction. Anna, Zeus, you're coming with us, but not as forest rangers. You are now the spearhead, the only hope we have of tracking these ghosts. The responsibility weighed on Anna's shoulders, but determination hardened her gaze. She knelt and stroked Zeus's head. The dog, her loyal and extraordinary partner, was the key to unraveling the web of lies and danger that lay before them. The journey out of the woods had been just the beginning, and the path ahead promised to be arduous and dangerous, but now they had an unusual compass. Davy's order cut the tension in the bunker like a sharp blade, transforming the abstract threat into a tangible mission. A shiver of adrenaline ran through Anna's veins, a mix of fear and determination. She knelt, running her hand over Zeus's soft fur, feeling the vibration of his unease. "Let's go, boy," she whispered. "It's time to work." Miller, with silent efficiency, was already on the radio issuing concise orders. Within minutes, the conference room emptied, and the bunker became a hub of feverish activity. Task Force agents, grim-faced and with calculated movements, began to gear up. Tactical vests, assault weapons, high-tech communication devices. This was no ordinary forest patrol. This was a hunt. The team gathered in the courtyard. The night air crisp and biting. 3 black utility vehicles, modified for rough terrain, waited with their engines softly rumbling. Anna and Zeus boarded the first SUV with Miller at the wheel and 2 armed agents in the back seat. The silence inside the vehicle was broken only by the low crackle of radios and the rustle of equipment being adjusted. They advanced along the gravel road, the vehicle lights cutting through the forest darkness. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air, familiar and comforting to Anna, but now tinged with a new layer of danger. Zeus was alert, his nose moving incessantly, sniffing the air that seeped through the window cracks. He kept his head turned eastward, the direction he had indicated, like a living compass. The gravel road gave way to a dirt track, and soon to no discernible path at all. Miller skillfully maneuvered the vehicle between trees, branches scraping the bodywork with a harsh sound. The SUV swayed and groaned, but pressed on. The forest grew denser, the darkness almost impenetrable, save for the headlight beams that danced over tree trunks and foliage. Suddenly, Zeus let out a short, urgent bark, a sound that echoed in the muffled interior of the vehicle. He scratched at the dashboard, his eyes fixed on a spot in the darkness. "Stop here," Anna ordered, her voice firm. Miller braked sharply, the wheels skidding on the loose earth. The other vehicles stopped behind with a hiss of tires and the snap of brakes. "What is it?" Miller asked, his hand already on his holster. "He senses something," Anna replied, opening the door. Zeus leaped out, his paws touching the ground with a soft thud. He began to advance, his body tense, nose low, sniffing the ground. The agents followed, flashlights in hand, their beams cutting through the darkness. The forest's silence was broken only by the rustle of leaves under their feet and the distant hum of nocturnal insects. Zeus led them through dense thickets and ancient trees, ignoring easier paths. He was an arrow guided by an invisible sense. The air began to change. A subtle scent, almost metallic, mixed with something chemical and earthy, hit Anna's nostrils. It wasn't the natural smell of the forest. Zeus growled low, a sound that vibrated in his chest. And then the light of one of the flashlights revealed it. It wasn't a camp, nor a structure. It was a clearing, strangely circular, where the vegetation seemed to have been suppressed by some force. In the center, there was an object. It was large, dark, and irregularly shaped, partially covered by a camouflage tarp, but visibly made of an opaque metal. A low, almost inaudible hum emanated from it, a sound Anna only perceived when Zeus began to tremble slightly, his hackles raised. Around the object, the ground was marked with fresh tracks, and the metallic scent was stronger. There was also the faint odor of something burnt, like overloaded electronics. "What is that?" one of the agents whispered, his voice filled with caution. Miller approached slowly, his weapon raised. He pulled back the tarp with the tip of his barrel. What was revealed made Anna's heart pound. It was a kind of transport module, an organic-shaped futuristic vehicle, lead-gray in color, that seemed ripped from a science fiction movie. It had no wheels, no visible wings. It appeared to have landed there, leaving a slight depression in the soil. On its side, an hourglass symbol, precisely etched, glowed faintly under the flashlight beams. "It's theirs," Davies, who had arrived with the second vehicle, said, his voice tense. "An insertion and extraction module. They use it to move without leaving conventional traces." He knelt, examining the ground. "They've been here, recently." Zeus let out a louder growl, and then, with a swift movement, pointed his nose towards the rear of the module. There was a hatch, slightly ajar, from which the hum was more intense. A faint bluish glow pulsed from within. "There's something inside," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. "He's reacting to what's inside." Davies and Miller exchanged glances. The caution was palpable. This wasn't an abandoned camp. It was a machine, a tool of the Chronos. Left behind, or perhaps waiting. "Careful," Miller warned. "It could be a trap." Zeus, however, didn't hesitate. He approached the hatch, sniffing the air with intensity. A metallic clicking sound, more distinct this time, came from inside the module. The bluish glow intensified for an instant, and then a sickly, sweet, nauseating scent began to emanate from the opening, a smell that made Anna instinctively recoil. "It's the poison," Davies said, coughing slightly, "the same neurotoxin they used on the soldiers." Zeus, despite the smell, remained firm, his growl transforming into a continuous bark, directed into the module. He was trying to warn them of something. The team prepared, weapons drawn. The forest's darkness seemed to swallow the sounds, leaving only the hum of the machine and Zeus's insistent barking. The compass had led them to the heart of the lair, but what awaited them inside was a terrifying unknown, and the imminent danger was almost palpable in the heavy night air, and grew even denser, with the sickly, sweet, nauseating scent of the neurotoxin making Anna recoil, a knot forming in her throat. The agents coughed, some covering their noses and mouths with their hands, while Davies, a handkerchief pressed against his face, signaled for them to keep their distance. But Zeus, despite the suffocating odor, remained firm, his barks now more urgent, almost desperate, directed at the half-open hatch of the module. "He's not just warning about the poison," Anna said, her voice tense. "He's alerting us to something more, something inside." Miller, his gas mask already on, gestured for two agents to quickly gear up. The muffled sound of their voices through their communicators was almost inaudible. "We can't go in without full protective gear," he warned, his voice distorted by the mask. "This neurotoxin can be lethal by inhalation." Davies nodded, his eyes fixed on the bluish glow pulsing within the module. "Zeus is right. There's an energy resonance coming from there. It's faint, but perceptible. If the Chronos left this behind, it wasn't by oversight." Suddenly, a loud click, like a circuit closing, echoed from inside the module. The bluish glow intensified, pulsing faster, and the machine's low hum grew in volume, transforming into a sharp hiss that grated on Anna's ears. At the same time, the smell of the poison seemed to dissipate, replaced by a metallic, ozonized odor, like the air after an electrical storm. Zeus stopped barking abruptly, but his hackles remained raised. He took a step back, then another, his eyes fixed on the hatch, a low, continuous growl vibrating in his chest. It was no longer a warning of imminent danger, but a deep distrust. "The smell... It's gone," an agent murmured, taking his hand from his nose. Davies approached cautiously. And the resonance has changed. It's as if something has been activated or deactivated. He signaled to Miller, "Sergeant, prepare a team to enter, but with extreme caution. Zeus, stay with Anna, but remain alert. Your perception is our greatest advantage." Miller selected 2 agents who approached the module with weapons raised. One of them used the tip of his barrel to push the hatch, which opened smoothly, revealing the interior. There was no explosion, no obvious trap. The bluish light bathed the small compartment, revealing a series of control panels and a single ergonomically designed seat. But what captured everyone's attention wasn't the futuristic controls. In the center of the seat, there was a small object. It was a metallic box, no larger than Anna's palm, with a single button on top that glowed with the same blue light as the module's interior. Beside it lay a small piece of fabric, a silk scarf, which Anna recognized immediately. It was Luna's scarf. A tense silence hung in the clearing. The machine's hiss and the distant hum of insects were the only sounds. "What is that?" Anna whispered, feeling a chill. Davies, with Luna's scarf in mind, approached the box, ignoring caution. "It's a transmitter," he said, his voice low and filled with new apprehension. "Or a receiver, but not for common communications." He reached out, but hesitated before touching it. The Chronos are masters of psychological traps. This could be a distraction or something worse. Zeus, who had kept his distance, took a step forward, sniffing the air around the box. He let out a short bark, almost a whimper, and then pushed his nose against the box, sniffing it with an intensity that suggested recognition. "He's sensing something familiar," Anna observed, "something related to Luna." Davies examined the box more closely. The Kronos hourglass symbol was etched into its metal. "This isn't just a device, it's a message, a provocation." He pointed to the scarf. "Luna's scarf isn't here by chance. They want us to know they have her and that they're one step ahead." Miller, who had maintained external security, now approached, his expression grim. "They're toying with us." "Worse," Davies corrected. "They're leading us. This module wasn't abandoned. It was left to be found. The dissipation of the poison, the change in resonance, all planned. They wanted us here." With a sudden movement, Zeus nudged the box with his nose. The blue button on top flashed once, and then a soft sound, like a distant whisper, echoed through the module's interior and spread across the clearing. It wasn't a voice, but a sequence of tones, almost musical, that Anna felt vibrate in her bones. It was the same sequence of tones she had heard in the forest when Zeus first found Luna. "It's the sound," Anna gasped. "The same sound Zeus heard before, the one that guided him to Luna." Davies paled. "It's not just a tracking device, it's a beacon, a homing beacon. They used it to lure Luna or to control her, and now they're using it to lure us." He picked up the box carefully. The blue glow pulsed rhythmically, and the soft tones continued to echo. "This is the device that activated Luna's implants. That controlled her, perhaps, and now it's calling us." Zeus growled again, this time a deep, menacing sound, his eyes fixed on the box. He seemed to understand the sinister nature of the object, the way it connected to Luna's innocence. "Where is it calling us?" Miller asked, his voice hardened. Davies looked eastward in the direction Zeus had initially indicated, to the heart of the forest, to where the original resonance led us. "This is just the invitation. The real trap lies ahead." The discovery of the beacon transformed the mission. It was no longer a blind hunt. It was a cat-and-mouse game, where the Chronos were setting the rules, using their own technology to draw in their pursuers. Anna felt a shiver. Zeus's compass had led them to the beacon, but now the beacon would lead them to an uncertain fate, to an inevitable encounter with a force that always seemed to be one step ahead. The soft, hypnotic sound of the box pulsed in the air, a sinister invitation to the unknown. The soft, hypnotic sound of the box, now in Davy's hands, seemed to permeate the very dampness of the forest, a sinister invitation that resonated more in Anna's soul than in her ears. The revelation that this device controlled Luna and now guided them transformed apprehension into cold fury. "Can't we just turn it off?" Miller asked, his voice rough, his hand still firm on his rifle. Davies shook his head. "If we do, we lose the trail. And if they activated it to draw us in, there's a reason. They probably want us to follow it to the next rendezvous point, or to the next trap." He looked at Anna. "They're using Luna as bait, and this beacon is the fishing line." Zeus, who hadn't taken his eyes off the box, let out a low growl, almost a lament. He nudged Anna's leg with his nose, then pointed his head eastward, the direction the beacon seemed to indicate. His hackles were still raised, but now there was an urgency in his movements, a determination in his eyes that Anna recognized as the same he'd had when he first found Luna. "He wants to go," Anna said, her voice tense but firm. "He knows what's at stake." "It's a risky gamble," Miller pondered, looking at the agents. "It could be an ambush. They might be waiting for us." "They're waiting for us anyway," Davies retorted, the blue glow of the box reflecting in his glasses. "The difference is that now we have a chance to dictate the terms, or at least to understand the scope of their game. If we don't follow, Luna could be in even greater danger, and we lose our only concrete lead." The decision was made, with Davies holding the beacon, which continued to emit its hypnotic tones. The team advanced. Following Zeus's internal compass, the dog led the way, his supernatural sense of smell and hearing picking up nuances that humans couldn't. The forest, once merely dense, now seemed to conspire against them, its twisted branches forming menacing shadows, the ground damp and slippery under their boots. The sound of the beacon seemed to intensify as they advanced, the musical tones becoming clearer, more urgent. Anna felt a strange duality. The fear of the unknown mingled with a fierce hope that each step brought them closer to Luna. She watched Zeus, his powerful silhouette moving with silent agility, muscles tense beneath his fur. He was the link, the bridge to the inexplicable. After about an hour of exhaustive trekking, the terrain began to change. Dense vegetation gave way to more sparsely spaced trees, and the ground, once covered with decaying leaves, became rockier. A different scent began to mingle with the forest air, something metallic and earthy, like exposed ore. Zeus stopped abruptly, a deep growl emerging from his chest. He was no longer just following the beacon. He was reacting to something more. His eyes widened, fixed in one direction. The beacon in Davy's hands began to vibrate slightly, and the blue glow of its button pulsed with a feverish intensity, the musical tones transforming into a more complex melody, almost a song. "We're close," Davies whispered, his voice almost inaudible above the beacon's sound. "The resonance is getting stronger, much stronger." They emerged into an unexpected clearing, a circular space in the middle of the forest. The ground was packed earth with exposed veins of dark rock. In the center of the clearing, there was no structure, but a natural rock formation, a dark and imposing monolith that rose like a giant tooth from the earth. On its surface, etched with chilling precision, were the Chronos hourglass symbols, glowing faintly with a bluish light that seemed to mimic that of the beacon. The sound from the box was now deafening, a symphony of tones that seemed to emanate from the monolith itself. Zeus barked, a furious and desperate sound, and lunged towards the rock, his claws scraping the ground as he struggled to stop. "He's sensing something," Anna said, her voice failing. "Something powerful." Suddenly, the monolith began to vibrate. Small stones fell from its base, and a deep, grave hum emerged from its interior, making the ground tremble beneath the team's feet. The blue glow of the symbols intensified, pulsing faster and faster. "It's not just a monolith," Davies exclaimed, his voice filled with terror. "It's a station, an amplifier. They're using it to broadcast the signal to something bigger." And then, from the top of the monolith, a beam of pure blue light shot into the night sky, cutting through the darkness like a sword. It wasn't an ordinary light beam. It pulsed and trembled, and Anna felt a strange force pull at her, a vibration that seemed to resonate with the beacon itself in Davies's hands. The sound of the beacon and the monolith merged into a single electronic shriek, and Anna realized they weren't just being guided. They were being called, and the destination seemed far grander and more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. The monolith pulsed, an energy portal opening to the unknown. The beam of pure blue light shot into the sky, tearing through the leaf canopy and piercing the darkness above. Anna felt a visceral pull, as if the air was being sucked upwards, and the beacon in Davies' hands vibrated so violently he almost dropped it. The sound, once a melody, was now an electronic shriek that seemed to distort reality itself, making the earth tremble beneath their feet. Zeus, with a bark that mingled with the sonic chaos, tried to surge forward, but was held back by Anna, who gripped his leash tightly. His eyes, normally focused, now darted frantically, trying to process the avalanche of sensations no human could endure. He growled at the monolith, but also at the sky, as if seeing something invisible to the naked eye. "What is that?" Anna shouted, her voice muffled by the noise, her heart pounding uncontrollably. Davies, his face pale and eyes wide behind his glasses, could barely speak. "No, it's not a portal in the physical sense, Anna. It's a frequency, an energy wave. They're using the monolith to amplify the beacon's signal, to broadcast it on a scale I've never seen before." He pointed to the sky, where the beam of light seemed to expand, forming an ethereal dome. "It's a global beacon. They're transmitting something, or calling something." Miller, who had positioned himself behind a tree, his rifle aimed at the monolith, shouted, "Calling what? Other chronos? Is it an attack signal?" The beacon in Davies' hands stopped vibrating, and the blue glow stabilized, but the monolith continued to radiate its light and sound. Suddenly, the electronic shriek emanating from the rock changed. The tones became sharper, clearer, and Anna recognized the sequence. It was the same melody Zeus had heard, the one that had guided the dog to Luna. But now it was amplified, reverberating in every cell of her body. "It's Luna's song," Anna whispered, terrified. "They're broadcasting the frequency that controls Luna." Davies nodded, his expression grim. "They don't just control her, they're using her. This monolith is a transmitter, and the frequency they use to manipulate Luna, to activate her implants. They're sending it out to the world. To whom? To others like Luna? Or to activate something else?" Zeus, breaking free from Anna's grip, ran to the base of the monolith. He scratched the rock with his front paws, then nudged his nose against one of the glowing hourglass symbols. A low whimper escaped his throat, and then he lifted his head, howling. It wasn't a howl of pain, but of warning, of despair. His eyes were fixed on the top of the monolith, where the beam of light connected with the sky. As Zeus's howl echoed, the blue light in the sky began to flicker. It wasn't a malfunction, but a pattern, a sequence of light pulses that repeated like a code. And then Anna felt it, a new vibration, subtle at first, but rapidly growing in intensity. It didn't come from the monolith, but from above, from the sky. A distant sound, a low growing hum, began to fill the air, overriding the monolith's song. It was a heavy, mechanical sound, seeming to come from far away, but approaching rapidly. The monolith's blue light beam pulsed faster, like a lighthouse calling a lost vessel. "What is that?" Miller asked, his voice now a mix of apprehension and combat readiness. He adjusted his rifle's scope, trying to see through the darkness and the pulsing light. Davies followed Zeus's gaze to the sky, his eyes widened. "It's not a vessel," he corrected, his voice a hoarse whisper. "It's not an airplane." From the center of the blue light dome in the sky, a dark shape began to materialize. It wasn't smooth or aerodynamic like an aircraft. It was angular, fragmented, and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As it descended, the hum transformed into a roar, and Anna realized it wasn't a machine. It was a structure, a station. And it was falling. Zeus growled, a deep guttural sound that made the ground vibrate. He recoiled, pushing Anna back with his body, his eyes fixed on the monstrosity descending from the sky. The structure was gigantic, a shapeless mass of dark metal and sharp edges, covered with more hourglass symbols, which now glowed with the same blue light as the monolith. "It's a transmission station," Davies finally managed to say, his voice filled with horror. "They're using the monolith as a beacon to guide it. It's a platform, a control platform." The structure descended faster, the roar deafening. They weren't just transmitting Luna's signal, they were activating this, calling it here, to the forest. The station, which now looked like a piece of a floating city, hovered a few hundred feet above the clearing, its blue lights pulsing in sync with the monolith. From its base, several dark points began to detach, rapidly descending towards the forest. "It's not just Kronos," Miller exclaimed, firing a warning shot into the air, though he knew it was useless. "They're drones, combat drones." The dark shapes were indeed drones, but not like any Anna had ever seen. They were large, agile, and their red eyes glowed with murderous intent. They spread across the clearing, surrounding the team, while the station hovered menacingly above. Luna's song, amplified by the monolith and the station, now seemed to come from all sides, a hypnotic and deadly melody. Anna felt fear chill her veins, but also a rising fury. The Kronos weren't just playing games, they were declaring war, and the battlefield was the forest, with Luna as the ultimate prize. Zeus positioned himself in front of her, a shield of fur and muscle, growling at the approaching drones. His eyes fixed not just on the machines, but on what they represented, the threat to a child's innocence. The air filled with the metallic hum of the drones, a sinister prelude to the imminent confrontation. The metallic hum of the drones intensified, a symphony of death that enveloped the clearing. Zeus, a bastion of loyalty, growled incessantly, his hackles raised in a primal challenge. His eyes didn't just perceive the cold, metallic machines. He saw the malevolence that propelled them. The shadow of the Kronos conspiracy. Miller was the first to react. The crack of his rifle echoed, cutting through the heavy air. A drone, approaching with terrifying speed, shuddered, blue sparks exploding from its flank before it crashed into a pile of smoking debris. "They're tougher than they look," he shouted, reloading with trained agility. Anna felt Zeus's pull, preparing for the attack. "Zeus, wait!" she commanded, her voice firm, but the dog was beyond normal command. The melody of Luna's song, now a piercing electronic shriek, seemed to penetrate his mind, twisting his perception. He wasn't just defending, he was hunting, driven by a protective fury that transcended his training. Davies, still holding the beacon, which was now silent, but whose hourglass symbols on the monolith pulsed with a feverish intensity, shouted, "The song! It's interfering with our communications, and it's affecting Zeus!" He pressed a button on his wrist device, trying to establish contact with headquarters, but heard only static. The first drone advanced on them, its metallic claws extended. Zeus didn't wait. With a furious bark, he lunged, a swift and powerful shadow. He leaped, his jaws clamping around one of the drone's legs. The metal screeched, and the drone whined electronically before being slammed to the ground with brutal force. Zeus tore it apart with a ferocity Anna had never seen, ripping out wires and components with instinctive precision. But there were too many. Other drones descended, forming a ring around the team. Their red eyes glowed, and small apertures at their bases began to emit a faint shimmer, a prelude to energy blasts. "Behind the rocks!" Anna shouted, pushing Davies and Miller towards the cover of a nearby rock outcrop. She threw herself behind Zeus, who continued to attack, but was being overwhelmed. A blue energy beam shot from a drone, hitting the rock where Miller was hidden. Stones exploded into fragments, and the smell of burnt ozone filled the air. Zeus, amidst the battle's fury, paused for an instant. His head tilted, and a low whimper escaped his throat. Luna's song seemed to be intensifying, not just in the air, but within him. He turned to the monolith, then to the hovering station, and then to Anna, his eyes expressing deep pain and understanding. "He's understanding the song," Davies gasped, his voice tense. "It's not just control, it's a language, and they're using it for something more than just Luna." Suddenly, the station in the sky began to emit a new frequency, a grave pulse that made the ground tremble again. The drones paused their attacks for a brief moment, as if receiving new instructions. Then, Luna's song changed. It was no longer just a hypnotic melody. It transformed into a sequence of clear commands, almost words, that resonated in Anna's mind. They weren't human words, but a language of frequencies, one that she felt Zeus understood on a deeper level. Zeus howled again, but this time it wasn't a howl of despair. It was a howl of defiance, of recognition. He turned to the drones, and his eyes no longer showed just fury, but a sharp intelligence. He wasn't just reacting, he was thinking. "They're using the song to coordinate the drones," Davies realized, his voice filled with horror. "It's a neural network, and Zeus is inside it." One of the drones, larger and more robust than the others, descended directly from the station, landing in the center of the clearing. It had no visible weapons, but its red eyes glowed with a cold intensity. From its base, a holographic projection began to form, a human figure distorted by the blue light. It was a woman, her features delicate and elegant, but her eyes, even in the projection, carried a calculating coldness. She had the hourglass symbol etched into her neck. "Anna," the holographic figure spoke, her voice calm and resonant, echoing through the clearing. "You have interfered with our plans for too long. The dog. He is a miscalculation, but a miscalculation that will be corrected." Zeus growled at the projection, a sound that seemed to tear the air. He didn't attack, but positioned himself between Anna and the figure, his muscles tense, ready for any movement. "Luna is just the beginning," the woman continued, ignoring the dog. "The frequency you hear, Anna, is the awakening. The world is about to be reformatted, and your dog, with his unique sensitivity, is the key to understanding, or to being reformatted himself." Miller fired at the projection, but the bullet passed through it without effect. "It's a hologram!" he exclaimed, frustrated. "You cannot stop us," the woman said, a cold smile forming on her lips. "The station is active, the network is expanding, and the dog. He will feel the true power of the song." Luna's song, emanating from the monolith and the station, reached a deafening crescendo. Zeus trembled, his eyes closing for an instant, a whimper of pain escaping his throat. He fell to his knees, struggling against an invisible force that seemed to want to crush him. Anna didn't hesitate. Desperation for Zeus transformed into a raw force that propelled her. With a cry of fury, she lunged at the nearest drone, which blocked her path to the dog. The machine's cold metal grazed her shoulder as she dodged an attack, the combat knife she carried in her boot already in her hand. She plunged it with surgical precision into one of the drone's joints, and the machine shrieked, sparks flying before it crashed heavily. Miller and Davies, seeing Anna's determination, redoubled their efforts. Miller's rifle fired in controlled bursts, taking down more drones, while Davies, using the beacon as an improvised shield, deflected the blue energy beams that whizzed around him. "Go, Anna! We've got you covered," Miller shouted, his voice muffled by the chaos. Anna reached Zeus, who writhed on the ground, muscles rigid, eyes squeezed shut. A deep groan, almost a lament, escaped his throat. Luna's song, now a deafening chorus of dissonant frequencies, seemed to tear the fabric of the air, and Anna felt the pressure in her own head, a searing pain that threatened to paralyze her. She knelt beside Zeus, trying to calm him, her hand on his fur. "Zeus, hold on, boy, fight it!" The holographic figure watched, a cold smile on the woman's lips. "Useless, Ranger. The song is rewriting his synapses. He is no longer yours. He will be ours, a perfect tool for the new era." But something unexpected happened. As Anna touched Zeus, a wave of energy, cold and pulsating, seemed to emanate from him and pass into her. It wasn't Luna's song, but something different, a resonance that seemed to counter the invading melody. Zeus's eyes opened, but they weren't the eyes of a dog in agony. They glowed with an intense blue light, the same color as the monolith, but with an intelligence that seemed to go beyond the animal. He wasn't being broken. He was adapting. A howl, unlike anything Anna had ever heard, erupted from Zeus. It wasn't a howl of pain nor of defiance, but a complex, multifaceted sound that seemed to harmonize with Luna's song, yet simultaneously distort it. The drones that attacking Miller and Davies suddenly hesitated. Their red eyes flickered, and some of them began to collide with each other, their metallic structures grinding in an electronic protest. The holographic figure paled, the smile vanishing from her lips. "Impossible," she murmured, her voice losing composure. He's hacking the frequency. He's responding." Zeus rose, swaying for a moment, but his blue eyes burned with a new strength. He looked at Anna, and she felt a deep connection, an understanding that transcended words. He wasn't just hearing the song, he was singing it back, but with his own melody, his own intention. The station in the sky began to emit a piercing sound, an alarm. The woman's holographic projection began to flicker, distorting. "He's an anomaly! Deactivate him! Destroy him!" she shrieked, her voice now filled with panic. The drones, which had paused, now turned on Zeus with renewed fury, but their coordination was visibly compromised. Some of them moved erratically, like puppets whose strings had been cut. Zeus, for his part, didn't wait. He lunged, but this time it wasn't just a physical attack. An invisible pulse seemed to emanate from him with every bark, every growl, destabilizing the drones before his jaws even reached them. "He's using the frequency against them," Davies exclaimed, amazed and terrified. "He's disabling them." The holographic woman, now almost transparent, shrieked one last warning before her projection disintegrated completely. "You cannot stop the awakening, the monolith. It is the heart. As long as it pulses, the song will continue." The station in the sky, though still hovering, seemed to have lost some of its glow. Luna's song still resonated, but now it was punctuated by Zeus's howls and barks, which mingled and overlapped, creating a cacophony that was both chaotic and powerful. Zeus was no longer just a dog. He was a conductor, a translator, perhaps even a maestro of a new and dangerous symphony. The battle was no longer just about survival. It was about controlling the very frequency of reality. Zeus, the maestro of a dangerous symphony, unleashed howls and barks that transformed into invisible energy waves, tearing through the clearing's air. They weren't mere sounds, but complex commands, information that violently clashed with Luna's song. The remaining drones, once coordinated and lethal, now writhed in electronic spasms. One of them, preparing to fire at Miller, suddenly reversed its trajectory, colliding with another in an explosion of twisted metal and blue sparks. The smell of burnt ozone intensified, mingling with the metallic odor of destruction. Anna watched, paralyzed, as Zeus moved like an invisible conductor, his blue eyes pulsing with each sonic emission. He wasn't just disabling the drones. He dismantled them from the inside out, rewriting their code with his own frequency. A larger drone, the same one that had brought the holographic projection, began to spin wildly, its propellers shrieking before it crashed to the ground with a dull thud, its red lights extinguishing permanently. The hovering station in the sky, which had once hung with menacing serenity, began to vibrate violently. A sharp sound, almost an electronic lament, emanated from it, trying to override Zeus's cacophony. But the dog did not yield. His howl became deeper, more complex, and Anna felt the pressure in her own head diminish, as if Zeus was creating a sonic shield for her. "He's turning the song against them," Davies shouted, his voice filled with a mix of terror and awe. He and Miller had stopped shooting, watching Zeus's spectacle. The last drones fell, silent and inert, their carcasses scattered across the clearing like dead insects. Zeus's attention turned to the monolith. The dark stone, which pulsed with the blue light of Luna's song, now seemed to tremble. Zeus's howl transformed into a guttural melody, almost a wail song, that resonated through the monolith. The blue light emanating from the stone began to flicker, weakening and strengthening in an irregular rhythm, like a heart under attack. Anna felt a new wave of energy emanate from Zeus, no longer cold, but warm and vibrant. It was an energy of life, of resistance. She touched Zeus's fur again, and this time the connection was deeper. She saw images in her mind, energy patterns, complex networks, the essence of Luna's song, but also Zeus's counter-response, an organic and unpredictable force. "He's not just hacking," Anna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He's communicating with it, with the frequency." The station in the sky, in a last, desperate attempt, fired a concentrated energy beam directly at the monolith. The blue beam cut through the air with a deafening hum, striking the stone with brutal force. An explosion of light and sound shook the clearing, and Anna was thrown backward, shielding Zeus with her body. When the dust settled, the monolith was cracked but not destroyed. The blue light emanating from it was weaker, but still pulsed. Zeus, though shaken by the blast, stood up, his blue eyes fixed on the station. A deep growl, laden with a new intention, escaped his throat. The station, now visibly damaged, began to move. It wasn't a movement of attack, but of retreat. It ascended slowly, emitting a continuous alarm sound, its lights flickering frantically. Luna's song, though still present, was distorted, fragmented, like an old recording being played on a broken turntable. "They're fleeing!" Miller exclaimed, grabbing his rifle again, ready to shoot. "No!" Anna shouted, holding him back. "Let them go! Zeus! He did what needed to be done here." She looked at Zeus, who watched the station recede until it disappeared among the dark clouds. The dog turned to her, and the blue light in his eyes diminished, returning to its normal glow, but with a depth that hadn't existed before. Silence fell upon the clearing, heavy and strange. Only the wind whispered through the trees, and the smell of ozone and burnt metal hung in the air. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The holographic woman had warned, the monolith was the heart, and as long as it pulsed, the song will continue. And now, Anna knew that Zeus wasn't just a dog. He was the key to understanding that song, and perhaps the only hope to rewrite the future. They needed to understand the monolith. They needed to understand Luna. And they needed to understand what Zeus had become. The air in the clearing hummed with residual energy, a phantom reminder of the sonic battle. The silence that followed the floating station's retreat was heavy, almost deafening, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant crackle of something still burning. Anna knelt again beside Zeus, her hand on his warm fur. The intense blue light in his eyes had diminished, returning to its usual glow, but with a depth and intelligence that hadn't existed before. He looked at her, and Anna felt a deep connection, a mutual understanding that transcended words. Miller and Davies approached, their faces etched with a mix of astonishment and disbelief. "Ranger, what was that?" Davies whispered, his voice hoarse, still trying to process what his eyes had witnessed. Miller checked his radio, pressing the transmit button several times. Only static hissed back. Nothing. Deadlines. Either they're still jamming the frequency, or the blast fried everything. Anna shifted her gaze from Zeus to the monolith. The crack was a jagged scar on its dark, smooth surface, but a faint blue glow still emanated from its interior, a persistent heartbeat. "The monolith is still active," she said, her voice thick with emotion and exhaustion. "The song, it's still there." Zeus let out a soft whimper, nudging Anna's hand with his snout. Then he looked at the monolith, a low, guttural growl vibrating in his chest, not of aggression, but of recognition. Anna extended her hand hesitantly, her fingers brushing the cold, hard surface of the stone. A subtle vibration coursed through her arm. It wasn't the overwhelming pressure of Luna's song, but a distant echo, a resonance. For a brief instant, an image flashed in her mind, energy patterns, complex networks, the essence of the song, but also something more, something ancient, vast, and intelligently organic. "He didn't just hack the frequency," Anna whispered, withdrawing her hand. "He understood it. He became part of it." Miller and Davies exchanged worried glances. "Is that good or bad?" Miller asked, lowering his rifle. "He's a dog, Ranger. He can understand us, but can he communicate back?" Zeus barked, a clear, sharp sound. He then nudged Anna's hand with his snout, looked in the direction the station had fled, and then back at the monolith. It was almost as if he was trying to convey a complex message. Anna felt a surge of hope. "He's trying to tell us something." Davies pointed to the sky, now grey and devoid of the station's menacing presence. "The station is gone, but not for long. They know what Zeus can do now. They'll come after him and the monolith." "We need to get out of here," Miller agreed. "And we need reinforcements. But how are we going to explain this to command?" Anna looked at Zeus, then at the cracked monolith, which still pulsed faintly. "We can't leave the monolith here. It's the heart," as she said, "and Zeus. He's the key to the song. He's the only thing that can help us understand." The ground beneath them trembled slightly. It wasn't an earthquake, but a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the forest itself, a distant echo of Luna's song, now mixed with something new, something that felt like Zeus's signature. The surrounding trees swayed with a subtle rhythm that wasn't just the wind. "The forest, it's responding," Davies whispered, looking around with nervousness. Anna knew that they had a monumental task ahead. Protect Zeus, understand the monolith, decipher the true nature of Luna, and confront an enemy that could manipulate reality itself. Zeus sat beside her, his gaze unwavering, a silent promise in his intelligent blue eyes. He was no longer just her K9. He was a bridge to a new understanding, a guardian of a secret that could reshape the world. They needed to move, but not without a plan. The monolith, though damaged, was too important to be abandoned, and Zeus was their most precious and most dangerous asset. The ground vibrated with a deep hum, an organic resonance that seemed to pulse from the very heart of the forest. It wasn't the violent tremor of an earthquake, but a subtle vibration that permeated the roots of the trees, a distant echo of Luna's fragmented song, now mingled with something new, wild and vibrant, Zeus's sonic signature. The surrounding trees swayed gently, their leaves rustling with a hypnotic rhythm that wasn't just the wind, but a response to the energy saturating the air. Davies looked around with wide eyes, his hand trembling slightly as he pointed upwards. The forest. It's responding, as if it's alive in a different way. Anna stood, her hand still on Zeus's fur. The cracked monolith, though still pulsing with a faint blue light, now seemed less a threat and more a portal to something incomprehensible. Zeus, sitting firmly beside her, tilted his head, his blue eyes watching the trees. A soft growl escaped his chest, not of aggression, but of a deep curiosity, almost of recognition. He didn't just hack the frequency, Anna said, her voice a thread, but imbued with a new conviction. He awakened it. He connected to something far older than Luna's song. Miller, who had holstered his rifle, approached the monolith, running his fingers cautiously over the crack. Whatever it is, we can't leave it here. It's a beacon, and if they come back, they'll want it. He looked at Anna and Zeus. They'll want him. The static hiss of Miller's radio was a grim reminder of their isolation. We're on our own for now. No one will believe what happened here. They'll have to believe, Anna replied, her voice gaining strength. The conspiracy the soldiers were investigating, the blind girl, the hovering station. It's all connected, and Zeus is the living proof. She knelt again, looking into her canine's eyes. Zeus, we need a plan. What do we do? Zeus let out a short, sharp bark, then nudged Anna's hand with his snout, before turning and walking in a small circle around the monolith, sniffing the cracked stone. He stopped, looking at Anna, then towards the dense forest that led back to the road. It was a clear message, almost spoken. He wants us to move it, Anna interpreted surprise in her voice. He wants us to get it out of here. Move that? Davies exclaimed, gesturing to the imposing dark stone. Ranger, that must weigh tons. We have no equipment, no people. Anna looked at the monolith, then at Zeus, who watched her with silent intensity. We can't, but we can protect it. We can take it to a safe place where we can study it, where we can understand what Luna wanted, what Zeus has become. An audacious and almost insane idea began to form in Anna's mind. The forest now wasn't just a backdrop, it was a participant. The energy Zeus had unleashed, nature's own response, could be the key. Davies, Miller, Anna called, her voice firm. We need a vehicle, something big enough to improvise, and we need a safe place, a place no one would expect. Miller frowned. A vehicle. And where are we going to find one out here? And a safe place? By now, they must have informants everywhere. The outpost, Anna said, remembering the small, rarely used forest ranger cabin a few miles away with a shed for equipment. It's rustic, but it has concrete walls and it's isolated, and the vehicle. The maintenance tractor. It's slow, but it has power. Zeus barked again, nodding his head, a gesture that made the men swallow hard. Ranger, you're talking about stealing a government tractor to transport an alien monolith with a superpower, dog, Miller said, his voice filled with disbelief. I'm talking about saving the world, Anna corrected, her eyes fixed on his. Or at least giving us a chance to understand what's happening before it's too late. The station is gone, but they'll be back, and next time, it won't just be with drones. A distant sound, a snap of a broken branch, made all three turn sharply. It wasn't the wind. It was something moving in the forest, something large and heavy. They're already coming back, Davies whispered, raising his rifle instinctively. Zeus let out a low, deep growl, his blue eyes glowing faintly again. He nudged Anna behind the monolith with his snout, positioning himself in front of her, an unwavering guardian. The hum of the forest intensified, the trees swaying more vigorously, as if preparing for a new battle. We don't have time to move the monolith now, Anna said, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Miller, Davies, we need to create a distraction. Zeus and I will try to camouflage the monolith's energy. Buy us time. Miller and Davies nodded, their faces hardened by determination. They knew they were in an impossible fight, but the sight of Zeus, The dog who defied reality ignited a spark of hope. "We'll make some noise," Miller affirmed, checking his rifle's magazine. "Enough to draw their attention away from here." The two soldiers moved quickly into the trees, disappearing into the dense foliage. The sound of approaching footsteps grew clearer, accompanied by a rustling of bushes and what sounded like the metallic click of equipment. Anna knelt beside Zeus, her hand on his fur. "All right, boy, let's go. Let's show them we're not so easy to find." Zeus let out a low howl, almost a lament, that wasn't of pain, but of concentration. The blue light in his eyes pulsed, and Anna felt a wave of energy spread from the dog to the monolith, and then to the forest itself. It was a sonic camouflage, a distortion of the frequency that made the monolith seem to merge with its surroundings, its blue emanations diminishing until they almost disappeared. The hum of the forest around them became a complex melody, a symphony of frequencies that seemed to envelop and protect the location. The sound of gunfire echoed in the forest, followed by shouts of anger and pain. Miller and Davies had engaged the enemy. Anna squeezed Zeus's hand, her heart pounding. The battle for truth, for freedom, and for reality itself was just beginning. And at its center was a dog, a cracked monolith, and the promise of a new symphony that could rewrite the future. They had a plan. Now they needed to survive to execute it. The world was about to discover that the forest held secrets far deeper than anyone could imagine, and that a dog was the key to unraveling them.